So we're on lesson 10-4, which is again working with mixed numbers and multiplication. So just like always, we've done these first ones, our guided practice in class. So we're going to focus on our independent practice. So here we are finding a mixed number times a whole number. So remember, whole numbers have no fractions. Mixed numbers are mixed because they have a whole number and a fraction. So we're just finding each product. So here's our picture to see. Remember, multiplication always the number of groups times the group size. So here, there's telling us there's two groups, which I see here, 1, 2, and this number is telling us the size. It's 3.5. So how do we do this? Well, we're going to multiply by each portion. Oops, I went too far with that. So we're going to multiply this 2 by my whole number, and then multiply the 2 by the fraction. And it's what we see here. We have two groups of 3. So we have 2 times 3 is 6. And then we're multiplying the fractions, which we see here. We have two groups of a half. And we know 1/2 times 2 is 2 halves. So my answer is 6 2/2. But I can simplify that because I know 2 halves is equal to 1 whole. So 6 plus 1 whole is 7 wholes. Heading off to number 6, we have 2 times 1/5. So again, we have this issue of this is our number of groups. We have two groups, but this time they have the groups separated like this. And then this is our group size, 1 2/5, which we see right here. That's how big one group is. So we're going to again multiply our whole numbers together. So we have 2 times 1, which my model shows me is 2 groups. So 2 times 1 is 2. And then we multiply our fractions. So 2 times this 2/5, which I see right here. I have two groups of 2/5. So I can count it up as 1, 2, 3, 4. So my answer is 2 4/5. I could also check by doing 2 times 2/5, which I know is equal to 2 over 1. And 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 5 is 5, which I then see that 2/5 over there as well. Heading off to number 7. Again, we multiply always our whole numbers first, and then our whole number times the fraction. So here I have my whole number times whole number. 3 times 1 is 3, and then I'm going to do my fraction of 3 times 5, 6. And 3 times 5, 6 is 15, because I have that 3 times 5 over 6. And now I need to regroup or rename. So how many times does 15 go into 6? Remember, I can always think of 15/6 as a division sign. So I would have 15 divided by 6. 6 goes into 15 2 times. Multiply and get 12. Subtract, I have leftover of 3. So I have 2, and remember, this is my group size, which is how many pieces I need to make a whole. 2 3, 6. So I have 3 plus 2 3, 6, because that's what this 15/6 equals, which then becomes 5 wholes and 3, 6, which I can then divide by 3, and get 5.5. So my final answer is 5.5. Heading off to number 8, multiply the whole numbers. 4 times 2 is 8. Then I multiply my fraction by the whole. So I have 4 groups of 3/8. 4 times 3 is 12 over 8. And I'm going to simplify this first. So I can divide by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Oh, but look, I can simplify it again. So I need to divide by 2 again. So this is what I'll end up with is 3 halves. What I could have done to start with at the very beginning, if I knew my factors well, is I could have divided it by 4/4, which then would have given me that original 3.5. So my final answer is 8 and 3.5, and I know I can rewrite 3.5 as 1.5. So I have 8 plus 1 is 9, and then I have a half left over. Heading off to number 8. Again, multiply those whole numbers together first. 8 times 12 is 16, and then I'm multiplying my whole number by my fraction. 8 times 3/4. Well, 8 times 3 is 24, and denominator stays the same. And I know I can simplify or rename or reduce 24 fourths by dividing by 6, because I can divide it by 4, but I can, oops, not by 6, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I can divide it by 4. So 24 divided by 4 is 6. 4 over 1 is 6. So this whole thing is the same as 6. So I have 16 plus 6 equals 22. Number 10. Multiply those whole numbers first. 10 times 3 is 30. Then I multiply my 10 times my fraction. 10 times 3 is 30 over 5. And I know this 30 over 5 is the same as 30 divided by 5, which gives me 6 wholes. It can go in 6 times. So I have 30 plus 6 is equal to 36. Heading off to number 11. Again, I multiply my whole numbers. 3 times 2 is 6. And then I multiply my whole numbers by my fraction. So 3 times 4 is 12. Denominator stays the same. I know if I have 12 pieces, then I will have 2 wholes. 2 wholes would be 5 tenths, so I'm taking away 10 from 12, so I'd have 2 pieces left. And I need 5 to make a whole. So I have 6 wholes plus 2 and 2 fifths, which is 8 and 2 fifths. Heading off to number 12 now. Remember, multiply those whole numbers. 3 times 4 is 12. And then multiply, I have 3 groups of 7 tenths. 3 times 7 is 21. Denominator stays the same. And I know 21 is 2 whole groups, and I'm taking away how many pieces? Well, I have 10, 20, so I'm taking away 20, which leaves me with 1 piece out of 10. So I have 12 plus 2 and 1/10, which is 14 and 1/10. Heading off to number 13. Again, remember, always multiply those whole numbers. 7 times 4 is 28, and then multiply the whole number by the fraction. 7 times a half is 7 halves. If I have 7 pieces, how many wholes can I make? Well, 7 divided by 2 goes in 3 times. I have 1 piece left over, and then my denominator is whatever I was dividing by, because that's how many I need to make a whole, so it becomes 3 1/2. So I have 28 plus 3 1/2 is 31 1/2. Number 14, remember, multiply again. The whole numbers. 9 times 5 is 45. And then I need to figure out the fraction. 9 times 3/4. Well, 9 times 3 is 27. Denominator stays the same. Now I need to figure out how many wholes I have. So 27 divided by 4. 27 divided by 4, well, that can go in 6 times. So I'll have 6 whole groups. Subtract. I have 3 left over, and I need 4 pieces to make a whole. So it's 3/4. So now this 27 divided by 4 is 6 3/4. And I have 45 I need to add. So adding together, I would have 51 3/4. Number 15. Again, remember, multiply those whole numbers. 11 times 1 is 11. And then multiply those fractions. So 11 times 2/3. 11 times 2 is 22. Denominator stays the same. So here I have 22 pieces. How many groups of 3 can I make? Well, 3 goes into 22 7 times. This is why I want to know those division facts, because it's going to make it much faster. And if we can do it in our head, then it's going to be an even easier job. So that 22/3 is the same as 7 1/3. And then I have that 11 wholes already. So that's 11 plus 17 is 18 1/3. Number 16, multiply those wholes. 4 times 1 is 4, and then multiply those fractions. 4 times 7 is what? That is 4 times 7 is 28. Denominator stays the same. And again, I need to figure out how many times 12 can go into 28. Well, I know my 12s is 12 24, so that's going to be 2 groups. And if I have 24 pieces and I'm taking away 28 pieces, I'm taking away 24, I'm left with 4 pieces. So here I have 4 plus 2 4/12, which is 6 4/12. And then I remember I need to divide so I can simplify. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So my final answer is 6. and 1/3. Last one on this page, again, multiply those whole numbers. 3 times 2 is 6, and then multiply the fraction. 3 times 1/5 is 3, with the denominator staying the same. So my answer for this one is just 6 and 1/3. Heading off to our next page. Oops, I'm sorry, we have one more left. Number 18. Remember, multiply those whole numbers. 8 times 9 is 72. And then I need to multiply the mixed number with the fraction part. So 8 times a half is 8 halves. And what I know about that is I can simplify or reduce. I can divide it by 2 and divide that denominator by 2, which gives me 4/1, which is the same as 4 wholes. So I have 4 plus 72. My answer is 76. Now we're ready for the next page. So number 19. Joel needs 24 apples for Bobby and his party. How many pounds of apples does Joel need? Well, it's telling me right here, 8 apples weigh 3 3/4 of a pound. So first, we need to figure out how do we get 24? Well, counting by 8s, we would have 8, 16, 24. So I would need 3 groups. So I would need 3 groups of this. So that is, and remember, multiplication is always the number of groups times the size. So my number of groups is 3, and then I need to figure out my size. Well, my size is 3 3/4. So now I have all the information I need. So just like before, multiply the whole numbers. 3 times 3 is 9, and then I multiply the fraction by the whole number. So 3 times 3/4 is 3 times 3 is 9, and denominator stays the same. Now I need to figure out how many times 9 can be grouped into groups of 4. Well, here I have 9 divided by 4. That's going to be 2 groups. Subtract, I'm left with 1, so I'll have 1 out of 4 left. So my final answer is 9 plus, and this 9/4 became that 2 1/4 is 11 1/4. Which student, Lisa or Anthony, correctly found 3 times 1/4 and explain? Well, first, let's see what we have. And then we see they both have the answer of 6 3/4. So since it's telling us only one had it, though, we need to see if there's a mistake anywhere. So here, let's see what we have for this part. So Anthony broke it up into 3 groups of 2 and 3 groups of 1/4, which is what we've been doing. And then we have that 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 1/4 is 3/4. So Anthony looks like he's good. So let's see what Lisa did, because I see this 27 over here, and I'm not sure how she got that, so I'm going to do some thinking. So here we have 3 times 2 1/4, but then we have this 9/4. So where did that come from? Well, that came from the 2 1/4 being changed into an improper fraction. So what we have is we times our whole by our denominator. So we're exchanging this whole number for 4 pieces 2 times. So I'm going to take that, and I will get 8, and then I'm adding these 8 whole pieces that I have here with this 1 piece I have up here. So I'm multiplying, and then I'm adding. So that 9/4 is actually the same as 2 1/4. So now we're doing that multiplication, and we see we have 3 times 9/4, which is 27/4. And then we broke that up into a whole number, and we decomposed it into that fraction. And then we have 6 plus 3/4. So this one was actually trying to trick us. So the answer is they both did. And what we need to do is we have to explain. So I'm going to erase this part we had here. And our explanation is that Lisa converted 2 1/4 to an improper fraction to solve while Anthony used the distributive property. And that's the one that we've been using, where we break it up into the groups of whole that we see right here and the groups of fractions, which we see right here. So they just use two different strategies, but their answers are the same. The stadium contains, for number 21, 8,217 blue seats and 7,236 red seats. There are 1,211 more green seats than red seats. So how many seats are in the stadium? Well, here we need to figure out my green seats because it doesn't tell us that, and we're comparing it to red. So I'm going to have to take my red seats, and that more than means I need to add it. So what I'm doing right now is I am finding the green seats. So there are 8,447 green seats. So now I need to add up all of my seats together and see what number I come up with. And my answer should be close to 8,000 plus 8,000 plus 7,000. My answer should be close to 23,000. 7 plus 6 is 13, plus 7 is 20. 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10. Regroup. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9. 8 plus 7 is 15, plus 8 is 23. So my answer is 23,900, which is close to that 24,000. Number 22. Calculate 8 times 7 3/4 with Lisa's method and then Anthony's method listed above. Which do you find easier? And explain. So I'm going to do Lisa's method first. So I have to change 7 3/4 into an improper fraction. So I multiply 7 times 4 is 28, and then I add. 28 plus 3 is 31. So Lisa has 8 times 31/4. So now what I need to do is I need to multiply my fraction by that whole number. So 8 times 31, well, I have 8 groups of 1 and 8 groups of 30, which is 240 over 4. And then I have to rename it. So I have to figure out 248 divided by 4. 4 goes into 24 6 times. 4 goes into 8 2 times. So my answer is 62. So now let's use Anthony's method to see if we have the same thing. So I have 8 times 7 3/4. So again, I multiply the whole numbers and I get 56. And now I multiply my whole by my fraction. 8 times 3 is 24 divided by 4. And what can I rename 24 divided by 4 as? Well, that's 6 wholes. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So I have 56 plus 6, which is now 62. We have to say which one we think is easier and explain. Well, this is a personal preference. What I think is easier is Anthony's. So I'm going to put Anthony's is easier. And why do I think it's easier? Well, I don't have to do this big division problem. I don't have to do this tiny division problem. So I'm going to say Anthony's is easier because I don't have as big of numbers to divide. I would much rather divide 24 than 248. Heading to our next one now. Which expression can be used to solve the following problem? Seth has 7 cans of tuna. Each can of tuna holds 5 9/10 of an ounce of tuna. How many ounces of tuna does Seth have? So I'm thinking of the number of groups times the size. So I have 7 cans times the size, which is 5 9/10. So I need to see if any of these match that. And it's not, so it's broken up. So now I need to figure out how they break it up. Well, again, remember, it's always my 7 groups of 5, and then I'm having 7 groups of 9/10. So what I see here is this is 7 groups of 9, which is not what I need, and 7 groups of 59. So what I'm left with are these two. So here I have my 7 groups of 5. And here, though, I don't have 7 groups of 9/10. I just have 9/10. So my only answer is C, because I have 7 groups of my whole numbers, 7 groups of my fractions. Number 24, which expression can we use to solve the following problem? So again, remember, it's my number of groups times the size. Sarah has 6 copies of the same book. If each book weighs 3 5/8 pounds, how many pounds do all 6 books weigh? So I have 6 times 3 5/8. So let's see what I have here. This one doesn't match any of them. So I'm going to use my distributive property to see if I can figure something out. So I have 6 groups of 3, which is 18, plus 6 groups of 5/8. So 6 times 5 is 30 over 8. But I still don't see that matching here. What I do notice about all of these, though, is that they changed it back to a mixed number. So let's see what I have here. So 30 divided by 8, how many groups can I make? Well, I can make 3 groups. 3 times 8 is 24. I'm left with 6. 6, and then my pieces to make a whole is 8, whatever I'm dividing by. So this is going to be 18 plus 3 and 6/8. Then we see if that matches any of them, and I see it matches B. So my answer is B. That's it for today.